Ben Affleck, a name that sparks endless debate, ignites social media firestorms, and sends Hollywood insiders scrambling for every scrap of inside information. The world sees him as a bright star who rose to unimaginable heights, stumbled into controversy, and somehow battled his way back into the spotlight. But behind the box office hits, the red carpet appearances, and the whispered rumors lies a story so explosive, so unexpected, that has been kept under wraps by the very industry that made him famous. Today, that story is about to be unleashed, and it may well change everything you thought you knew about this actor. Born in Berkeley, California, but raised primarily in Massachusetts, Ben Affleck did not begin life surrounded by the glitter of Hollywood. Instead, he experienced a relatively unremarkable childhood, days filled with neighborhood basketball games and nights dreaming about a future that felt just beyond reach. Yet, something set him apart from the other kids on his block. A spark of ambition so fierce and unyielding that it bordered on obsession. He was the kind of kid who would transform every mundane neighborhood gathering into an impromptu play or short film. Teachers recall him scribbling imaginative stories in notebooks, never quite satisfied until he found the words that captured the essence of his daydreams. It was this creative hunger that propelled Ben toward the stage at an early age. Before most of his peers had considered their future, he was acting in small projects, dipping his toes into a world that both enthralled and intimidated him. The transition from carefree kid to budding actor did not come without its challenges. Auditions were brutal, the rejections even more so, but Affleck persevered. He was convinced that if he could capture just the right role, it would open the door to the golden realm he had glimpsed on television screens and movie posters. Fate introduced him to Matt Damon, a friendship that would prove pivotal in his journey. The two clicked instantly, bonding over shared dreams, shared frustrations, and a shared resolve to change their own destinies. Together, they toiled in cramped apartments, surviving on meager paychecks and cheap meals, writing drafts of a script that refused to be tamed. That script, Good Will Hunting, would become a cultural phenomenon, earning them both an Oscar and launching them into the stratosphere of young Hollywood. In interviews, they claimed they never expected such success, but those close to them knew how meticulously they had planned for it, betting everything on their ability to tell a story that felt raw and real. After this triumph, the industry labeled Affleck as a brilliant newcomer, a fresh face ready to tackle any challenge. But fame, like a powerful undertow, can drag a person into the depths before they even realize what is happening. Ben found himself pulled toward blockbuster action roles and formulaic romantic comedies, the sort of projects that promised easy paydays and broad recognition. Producers typed his name on contracts with glee, believing they had found a handsome leading man who could charm mainstream audiences without much effort. But behind the camera flashes and magazine covers, Ben Affleck started feeling uneasy. He feared being pigeonholed as a toothy grin with no substance, losing the creative spark that had brought him to the forefront in the first place. The early 2000s became a whirlwind of high-profile relationships, paparazzi chases, and flashy premieres. Tabloids latched onto every detail of Affleck's personal life, painting him as a celebrity first and an actor second. Gossip swirled about his friendships, his romances, and his late-night hangouts. Some stories were exaggerated, others completely fabricated, but the impact was the same. He found himself stranded in the harsh glow of a spotlight that refused to show him as anything other than a living headline. Audiences, enthralled by scandal and sensationalism, devoured every rumor. They saw the glossy image carefully cultivated by the press, but few understood the internal battle he was waging to maintain a sense of identity. Then came a turning point that nearly derailed everything. Affleck accepted a starring role in Daredevil, a film that, at first glance, seemed like a sure bet. It capitalized on the rising superhero craze, featuring a beloved Marvel character and a talented cast. Yet production was fraught with issues, creative clashes, script rewrites, constant external pressure from studios to replicate the success of bigger franchises. By the time the film released, it was met with a lukewarm reception from critics and fans alike. Affleck took a brunt of the blame, unfair though it may have been. Suddenly, he was labeled box office poison, a term that hits any actor like a punch to the gut. This dark period extended beyond just one film. Affleck soon found himself cast in a string of underwhelming projects. It was as though the golden boy who had once been praised for his writing and acting prowess had morphed into a cautionary tale, the star who soared too high and crashed back to earth. People within the industry whispered that he was a casualty of his own fame, a man who had embraced the hype without fortifying himself against potential backlash. Interviews showed a weary Affleck trying to hold onto his dignity, while tabloids mocked him mercilessly, focusing on every misstep. But adversity, ironically, was exactly what he needed to rediscover the passion that had driven him since childhood. Retreating from the glare of the paparazzi, Affleck poured his energy into learning the intricacies of directing. He studied camera techniques, devoured film theory, and delved into the art of narrative pacing. Inspired by some of the greatest directors in cinematic history, he discovered that controlling the creative process from behind the camera gave him a new sense of purpose. His directorial debut, Gone Baby Gone, felt like a breath of fresh air. The film's gritty realism, moral complexity, and sharp storytelling stunned critics who had written Affleck off. It was as if a dormant part of him had awakened, reminding the world that he was more than just a tabloid fixture. His follow-up directorial effort, The Town, sealed his reputation as a filmmaker capable of handling both high-octane action sequences and nuanced character development. Audiences flocked to theaters, drawn by the exhilarating heists and the emotional depth of a film that somehow balanced heartbreak with explosive intensity. But it was Argo that truly catapulted Affleck back into Hollywood's top tier. The film's mix of political thriller, historical drama, and Hollywood satire resonated with viewers worldwide. When it snagged the Oscar for Best Picture, everyone took notice. Suddenly, the conversation shifted from Ben Affleck, the fallen star, to Ben Affleck, the formidable director. Studios raced to sign him to new projects, and magazines replaced mocking headlines with praises. Behind closed doors, though, Affleck was still grappling with the trauma of his earlier downfall. On set, he was a perfectionist, known to work late into the night, determined to redeem himself with each new project. And yet, the hidden tension never fully abated. He felt the weight of an industry that seemed only too eager to knock him down again if he slipped up. The psychological burden showed in interviews, where he tried to project confidence, but occasionally let slip remarks about the pressure he felt. Industry insiders spoke of how he could be moody and withdrawn during the filming process, wanting to control every aspect to ensure that the final product met his exacting standards. Then came a bombshell opportunity that would shape his legacy for years to come. The chance to don the cape and cowl of Batman. On paper, it was the ideal proposition. Affleck returning to superhero territory, but this time under the banner of a major studio with a massive budget, an established franchise, and the possibility of transcending the negative memories of Daredevil. Yet from the moment it was announced, the casting sent fans into a frenzy. The internet exploded with opinions, some supportive, many viciously critical. People dredged up old criticisms of his acting, sniping that he was unfit for such an iconic role. Affleck, for his part, approached the role with a seriousness that surprised even his detractors. Determined to prove his worth, he underwent intense physical training, studied the character's psychology, and did everything in his power to embody a version of the Dark Knight that felt fresh yet faithful to the source. He delivered a performance that many found compelling, capturing the rage and trauma of an older, battle-weary Batman. Still, the cinematic universe around him faced its own set of controversies and harsh reviews, often overshadowing the nuances of his work. That was not the only storm brewing on the horizon. Despite his renewed success in front of and behind the camera, Affleck battled personal demons that threatened to undo him. The unrelenting media scrutiny, combined with professional pressures, began taking a toll. Rumors circulated of emotional struggles that impacted his relationships and daily life. Some suggested that the unwavering microscope of fame magnified every misstep he made, turning private conflicts into public spectacles. Even so, through the chaos, Affleck kept moving. He tackled new directing projects, took on roles that challenged him, and maintained a determined public persona. Then, in a sudden twist, the news broke that he was stepping away from directing a Batman standalone film, a project he had once been slated to helm. The exact reason behind this pivot remained murky. Some blamed creative differences with the studio, others speculated about personal matters. While the tabloids had a field day, he retreated into silence, refusing to feed a media machine that seemed intent on dissecting his every moment. It was around this time that he accepted a leading role in Gone Girl, directed by David Fincher. Critics were surprised by how perfectly his somewhat weary, embattled persona fit the film's twisted narrative. Indeed, the role felt almost tailor-made for him, a man caught in a nightmarish public trial over events that spun out of his control. Though fictional, the film eerily echoed the sense of suspicion and relentless scrutiny that Affleck himself had battled for years. Viewers watched in fascination, drawn to the synergy between the actor's real-world challenges and the trials of the character he portrayed on screen. Yet even after delivering a mesmerizing performance in Gone Girl, the chatter about Affleck's personal life overshadowed much of the critical acclaim. Online communities and gossip outlets became fixated on every shift in his relationships, on every missmile during red carpet appearances. No matter how many achievements he piled up, the narrative seemed to circle back to his off-screen struggles, painting him as an actor perpetually teetering on the edge. Friends confided that he wrestled with a sense of constant vulnerability, as though the ground beneath him could crumble at any time. That vulnerability sometimes erupted in unexpected ways, most notably in interviews where he displayed unguarded emotion or a flash of defensiveness. His fans rallied behind him, urging the world to give the man the respect he deserved, while critics doubled down on their skepticism. Studios, aware that controversy sells tickets, found ways to spin narratives that kept Affleck's name in headlines. Yet the person at the center of it all was left to navigate a labyrinth of expectations, judgments, and his own uncertain reflection. In the midst of this, Affleck found solace in championing projects with deeper social messages. He directed and starred in films that tackled complex moral questions, stories that resonated with audiences longing for substance amid the cacophony of Hollywood spectacle. Through these endeavors, he forged alliances with like-minded creatives who admired his resilience and respected his vision. Slowly, he built a fortress of loyal colleagues around him: producers, writers, cinematographers, individuals who valued authenticity over spectacle. Unknown to the public, though, was an even greater battle waged behind the scenes. Whispers emerged of a powerful studio that had tried to corner Affleck into contracts that would have limited his creative freedom. The demands were enormous: multiple big-budget blockbusters with rigid timelines, minimal directorial input, and zero flexibility. In an era where cinematic universes reigned supreme, these negotiations threatened to trap him in a cycle of sequel after sequel. But Affleck fought back. He refused to let go of the directorial ambitions that had rekindled his career. Allies in the industry claimed he was prepared to walk away from a major franchise if it meant sacrificing the personal artistic control he had worked so hard to gain. Tensions rose to a fever pitch. The possibility of him quitting a massive cinematic role sparked near panic among studio executives. Tabloids smelled blood in the water, printing a string of sensational headlines. Would Ben Affleck leave a multi-million-dollar contract on the table? Had the weight of public scrutiny finally broken him? Or was he refusing to compromise on the same creative spark that once elevated him from an underappreciated actor to a formidable director? No official statement was released, but rumors persisted that last-minute interventions and intense negotiations convinced him to stay, albeit under terms that granted him some measure of autonomy. As the dust settled, Affleck emerged not exactly unscathed, but stronger in his resolve. He channeled the conflict into his work, turning to scripts that spoke to themes of redemption, resilience, and moral ambiguity. These stories, while commercial enough to draw audiences, also carried an undercurrent of introspection that mirrored his own journey. While many believed he was simply capitalizing on the public's fascination with his life, insiders insisted that he was grappling with genuine questions about identity and legacy. He also began exploring philanthropic endeavors with renewed vigor. Whether financing community projects or supporting international aid efforts, Affleck took clear steps to leverage his fame for something greater than personal gain. Those who interacted with him on these initiatives described a man driven by a desire to prove he was more than the sum of his controversies. He arrived at events without fanfare, meeting organizers on equal footing, demonstrating a surprising humility for someone who had traversed the peaks and valleys of stardom. Yet all of these public achievements and philanthropic gestures did little to silence the persistent chatter about his private life. The tabloids, unrelenting, dissected every photograph of him looking slightly weary, every rumor of stress in his relationships, every unverified story from a supposed insider. So while the world saw a man forging a new path, fighting for creative control, and supporting charitable causes, he was still the target of ceaseless scrutiny that threatened to overshadow his genuine progress. It was during this period that a mysterious script began circulating among industry circles. The rumor was that Affleck himself had penned it, a raw, brutally honest narrative that touched on fame, personal demons, and the blurred lines between heroism and humanity. Executives who read it were stunned by the emotional depth and intimacy, describing it as a confession wrapped in a fictional storyline. Some speculated that producing such a film might be therapeutic for Affleck, a way to lay bare his journey without the constraints of a typical studio piece. Inevitably, whispers circulated that studios wanted to tame the script, remove uncomfortable truths, spin it into something more palatable. However, those close to the project insisted that Affleck refused to yield. This was not about money or mainstream appeal, they argued. It was about exorcising the ghost that had haunted him for years. Negotiations stalled, advanced stalled again. No official announcements were made, but an undercurrent of anticipation rippled through Hollywood. Would Affleck finally create a story that tackled the relentless glare of the media, the suffocating weight of success, and the quiet desperation behind the polished veneer? Then, an unexpected development shook the industry once again. A significant leak, allegedly from a disgruntled insider, suggested that major entities in Hollywood were actively trying to block the film's production. The script was labeled too controversial, too raw, too close to real-life incidents that powerful figures prefer to keep concealed. Reports claimed that behind closed doors, massive sums were offered to alter scenes, remove references that paralleled Affleck's personal experiences, or even persuade him to shelve the project altogether. For a moment, it felt as though Ben Affleck stood at another career-defining crossroads. Would he compromise his vision under the weight of industry pressure, or would he stand firm, risking yet another potential fall from grace? Those who recalled his earlier struggles believed he would never yield. He had come too far, weathered too many storms, and discovered that his greatest triumphs emerged when he remained true to his core. While the ultimate fate of that rumored script remains uncertain, the story itself unveils the remarkable resilience that underpins Ben Affleck's career. From the glimmer of early promise with Good Will Hunting to the public crucible of commercial flops, from tabloid fodder to Oscar wins, he exemplifies the turbulence inherent in a life lived under perpetual public scrutiny. If anything, his journey stands as both cautionary tale and testament to the power of reinvention. Still, to reduce Ben Affleck to a neat, uplifting narrative would be a disservice. His story continues to evolve, marked by personal battles and cinematic ambitions that rarely align with the safe bets of big studios. Even as new roles bring fresh acclaim and new directorial projects capture the industry's attention, that undercurrent of tension remains. The same man who once soared too close to the sun with early fame now balances precariously on a high wire of expectation, determined not to fall, but aware that any misstep could send him plummeting once again. Yet perhaps it is precisely this tension that fuels his artistry. When he directs, Each scene bristles with an undercurrent of raw urgency, as though every frame is a chance to prove himself anew. When he acts, there is a depth to his eyes that suggests lessons learned from painful experiences. No role he takes on is merely for the paycheck anymore. Each is an attempt to craft a legacy that transcends the headlines. His colleagues describe him as driven, sometimes to the point of exhaustion, but also fiercely loyal to those who share his creative passion. As for what the future holds, speculation runs rampant. Will he deliver more groundbreaking directorial works, each more personal than the last? Will he step once more into a superhero suit, determined to leave an indelible mark on comic book cinema? Or will he retreat from the mainstream altogether, choosing smaller, riskier projects that speak to the complicated truths he has encountered in his life? One thing is certain: Affleck's journey is far from over, and any attempt to predict its course may be an exercise in futility. For now, we can only watch as he continues to navigate the labyrinth of Hollywood with the same stubborn resolve that once drove him to pen an Oscar-winning screenplay. Because behind the well-documented ups and downs, the sensational headlines, and the myriad controversies, lies a truth that is both simple and profound. Ben Affleck is a creator at heart, a storyteller determined to shape his narrative on his own terms, no matter how many times the world tries to rewrite it for him. This is the shocking truth that Hollywood did not want you to see. A portrait of an actor and director who rose from obscurity, tasted the heights of fame, crashed spectacularly, and clawed his way back through sheer grit and unyielding passion. It is a tale of resilience, a testament to the human spirit's capacity to fight back against the crushing weight of public perception. And it is a story that, once fully revealed, just might change everything you thought you knew about Ben Affleck.